tech
get
whiz.
started. I I'm not. I'm always like, please hope that it
Please
works.
work.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, please work. It looks like we are going live now. So it is working. So
Cool.
hooray, because it has been a while since I have done this little streaming setup. So um Lisa, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. And I know it has been so helpful for other people to hear stories, right? And just to hear how people are living their lives, what they've been through. And so I would love for you to introduce yourself as a person and maybe share a little bit of your story of what was happening for you before you met us at Reactive.
Sure, yeah. I actually was one of those people that was like hungrily absorbing all of your content when I was early in my situation. And so it's actually so funny to like be in this situation. It's like amazing how time works. Where I'm like, oh my God, now I'm one of these people because I really appreciated all of the people that talked to you beforehand so I could get information as well. Um, yeah, before everything happened, before um reactive entered my life, I was just this like, normal, early 30s writer. Never had any health problems ever. I was so lucky now. I think back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am filled with gratitude now. Um and yeah, just like a normal like person, love my dogs. Didn't like sort of a homebody. And yeah, when all this happened, everything just changed.
Yeah. Yeah. So I and you can share as little or as much as you want. I wonder, like, folks want to know what happened,
Oh,
like
right. Yeah,
what
yeah, okay.
went through for you to, be searching for information and trying to find some answers.
Yeah, for sure. I I guess I should say prior to all this, I had gotten COVID like once or twice and was fine. Nothing crazy happened. I had sort of like a bad cold, and got over it, and it was no big deal. Then last Christmas, so Christmas of 2023, um, I was a month like shy from having my eggs frozen, like my eggs harvested. So my hormones were like super out of whack, which I learned later was like extremely important to why this happened to me. Um,
Okay.
was on a plane. While we were on the plane, we found out through email, my wife, that her mom had COVID, and we were flying there for Christmas. And so I was like, oh God, oh no. But we didn't get a hotel room. We stayed and I got super sick.
Oh,
Um, the acute infection hit me differently than it did the
mm,
prior times I had gotten COVID. It was like all like neurological stuff. Like I would get like tingling in my arms and my legs. I felt like really weird. I felt numbness. It freaked me out. Was super sick for like 3 weeks. It was like I had
mm,
gotten hit by a car. Like I just was
oh,
sleeping constantly. My body was like just insanely fatigued. I couldn't really eat much. It sucked. It was like 3 weeks of just suckiness. Then I
mm,
started to get better. And I was like, okay, whatever, finish that. That's over. Then a few months went by. I still had some like lingering stuff from the COVID. I had like some nausea, like some diarrhea, like stuff like that, like stomach stuff. But I just sort of ignored it. I was like, no big deal, whatever. I could live my life. Everything's fine. Then in March, so like if or March or April, I just like got hit in the face with just like all these new symptoms like suddenly. All of a
oh,
sudden my heart rate was just insanely high all of the time, particularly when I stood up, which I learned later was POTS. A lot of GI stuff, was losing a ton of weight. Like I lost like 30 pounds.
oh, wow.
I suddenly had all these random food allergies, like stuff that
Mm,
like chickpeas all of a sudden were like, like a weapon of war in the house for some
Oh
reason,
my.
like random stuff that I never had a problem with before. I had no energy. If I like just showered, I would just collapse. Like I could not shower. I couldn't really walk around. It was just like I was bedridden, like suddenly, for months, and it sucked. There's probably more things I can't think. Oh, heat. I couldn't handle the heat.
Oh.
Like if I got hot and it was like super hot in LA, I would just like my whole body would like seize up. I had to pee
Mm.
constantly, just like all sorts of like nervous system uh dysregulation. And yeah, it sucked. Thinking about it now, I'm just like, oh my God. Like it's hard to think about. It just sucked.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'm hearing it, and it's not like a completely unusual story of
Mhm.
these symptoms happening, as you probably learned with POTS. And at some point, were you also looking at MCAS with like all of these allergies and
Yes, definitely.
yeah.
In the very beginning, like before I found doctors, before I found you guys, I was just Googling my symptoms. My
Yeah.
wife found like this Reddit group that was about long COVID people, and I slowly
Mhm.
started to piece together long COVID,
Yeah.
POTS, MCAS, and it was like all of a sudden I felt like I was like an investigative doctor, like just trying to figure out all these things. But yeah, all of
Yeah.
those things sort of like became entered my world, I guess.
Yeah. And it was new to the healthcare world, right? Like we hadn't dealt with COVID before and didn't know all of these things, but all of a sudden
Right.
people were developing these things that we had seen separately.
Mhm.
And it is amazing to look back, right? And go like, wow, like you were bedridden, you were
Yeah.
really, really sick.
Yeah.
Um, and doing like, I love how you said it. It's like you're an investigative, like journalist, medical,
Right.
like
Yeah.
you're piecing things together because they didn't exist. And and is that how you discovered reactive? I'm kind of curious how you
Yeah.
found us and kind of what drew you to what we were doing for folks with long COVID and POTS.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so the first step was I found that there was like a long COVID program at UCLA
Mhm.
Health. So I was like, okay,
Yeah,
let me
right.
do that. But that was like, there was like a 3 month wait or something. So within those three
Oh,
months of waiting for it, I felt like I was like just on my own trying to figure it out. Um,
mhm.
I think early on in that process, while I was waiting, I heard about like physical therapy as a possible help for my stuff.
Okay.
And at the time, I had absolutely no idea how physical therapy could have anything to do. I was like, what? That's crazy. And I sort of like ignored it. I was like, there's no way that could
Mhm.
help. Just like, nope. And sort of dismissed it. Then I finally met the doctor in my little like long COVID program initial appointment. And that was just like the most stressful appointment because he's trying to give you like all this information within like 15 minutes. It was crazy. And but he was great. I ended up like our healthcare system is so screwed up because I ended up having to just go to his private practice because that was like the only way to get care because in the long COVID program, they can only like you have your initial appointment and then they have all these other doctors you're supposed to see, but every doctor has like a 4 month wait. And so I ultimately had to spend all this money to go to his private practice, but whatever. He's the one that told me about you guys. He's the one that
Okay.
mentioned the Dallas Chops protocol. If I wanted to do it on my own, he gave me that PDF. But then he also said, he mentioned Julie Hirschberg at Reactive and in West LA. She's one of the best. Like it was like an offhanded thing. I heard
Yeah.
West LA. I live in Highland Park, so I heard West LA, and I
Okay.
was like, that might as well be in Arizona. Um,
I know.
but had it in my folder, and I was like, okay. And so when I got home that night, I started looking through everything, saw reactive in his note in his thing, looked you guys up. And then when I looked you up, I saw like your workshop and I
Oh, yeah.
watched your workshop and I learned like all of these terms that I hadn't known before, a lot of the advice that you gave about certain things, like the heat stuff, like the towel, like stuff like that, just like little things. And I was like, okay, this is where I have to go. And then that's when I looked into, I think I might have like sat on it for a little bit because I wasn't sure, like, I forget exactly, but anyway, I tried to get on your guys' waiting list and I filled out your stuff and I met Naoya in the consultation and he was amazing. And that was when I was like, okay, this is where I need to go.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. I know the distance from Highland Park to West LA is an entire continent. So I am glad you
I
overcame
trekked, I made
the
the journey. Yeah.
you made the journey, you made the trek. It really, like, honestly, like living in LA, it says a lot. It says a lot. And your journey is like, I also not unusual. Like, it's like you're putting the pieces together. You're having to go kind of outside some of the traditional medicine because waits are so long and
Right.
all of those things. You certainly pieced a lot together for yourself. And then you did our program, right? So you worked with PT, OT, psychology, yoga therapy, and not, you weren't going to make the trek. It's not every day of the week or anything like that, which you wouldn't have been able to tolerate anyway, but like you came about once a week, right?
Yeah, I
For
did. And
that.
one of the main reasons, like concerns for the distance was I couldn't go alone because I couldn't
Yeah.
drive yet. I
Right.
had to pee like every 15 minutes. Like that's how it like destabilized my autonomic nervous system was. I had to pee constantly. I ended up having to get like a in the car urinal. Like it was like I was like, this is my life now. Like I had, which now I'm actually glad I have for road trips. And my wife is
Yeah.
pregnant, so I was like, great, she could pee on in that when when she has to go in the middle of the night. Whatever, it's fine. It's probably gross, but it was just like a problem where my wife actually had to drive me every time I went because I couldn't. I was pretty disabled. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I did all the. I think I did all the rungs. The yeah, yoga, PT, OT, and psych. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm curious, where are you now? I mean, obviously, you're in your office. Your wife is pregnant. Many things have
Mhm.
changed since you first started with us, but what has kind of been the evolution in your symptoms and your life?
Oh man, it's I feel normal again. I feel like my eye was never normal, but like I was always a weird person, but I feel healthier than I felt before all of this. My life
Oh,
definitely is back on track and if anything I feel like I'm yeah, stronger, healthier, more aware of my health and what's important to maintain health. Um, it was reactive along with like a few other things that I did alongside it that really fixed me. And so for anybody dealing with long COVID, like you do have to treat it like a job. I think you have to
mm,
put in the
mm,
work. It's a career. Like it was really hard to work at the same time while doing everything.
yeah.
But if you do all the things, then you can get better.
Mm. That is quite a testament, Lisa, for for many people who have not been able to work or drive. I mean, you've listed all of the things that like everybody in LA wants to be able to do, wants to be able to go an hour without having to pee, for example. But
Yeah.
but I gotta tell you, the mobile, urinal for a woman is like amazing
It's this
for
little thing
many,
that you
many
pee
reasons.
in. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's so amazing. We all should have those. They're not gross. They're like, why does everybody else get to use that and we don't? So, um, yeah, and I think that message of kind of treating it like a job. So during this period of, I think you had about 9 or 10 weeks with us.
Mhm.
It sounds like you kind of treated it like your job. Like this was your mission to
Mhm.
get better. Hearing you talk, you're like an expert. I feel like you should be doing the workshops on the autonomic nervous system now. You know this stuff, you know this about your body. So you learned a lot in that time. And I wonder, like, what were some of the things, like, you actually said this, and I thought this was so nice that you said, like, why would PT be helpful? And obviously, it's not like an ankle sprain type of PT, right? So
Right.
I'm curious, what were some of the things about the different therapies, about PT, about OT, about psych or yoga that you kind of learned from?
Yeah, okay, for OT, I was with Malia, who's
Mhm.
amazing. She's just the most wonderful person. From her, she helped me find the tools that I needed, just in my day-to-day life. She helped me figure out like things to help deal with the heat, exposure stuff to cool myself down
Mm,
more. She helped me come up with like little problems that I had had. She'd help me come up with the solutions for them. So, for example, um, like I wanted to start being able to walk again. And so she would help me come up with ways that I could do that. I wanted to be able to work and do Zooms again, and she helped me come up with ways to pace myself. I guess like the big thing that she really helped me with was pacing, which I had
mm,
heard time and time again on like the long COVID groups and stuff of like you got to pace yourself. And I never really understood what that meant until Malia
yeah.
sort of explained that to me. And it sort of helped to understand that like my body was just constantly in that sympathetic state, and I needed to manually shift myself into that rest and digest parasympathetic state. And so she really helped me
Mm,
how to do that. So that was huge,
yeah.
Malia. Um, for PT, I worked with Emily, and she and Mackenzie as well. Um they really helped me. Like I had never really been like an exercise person. It just wasn't like I played sports growing up, and then I went to college and stopped, and then I just like assumed that my body would be fine. And I guess as I've gotten into my 30s, I was like, oh, I really should be exercising and stretching and stuff. But they helped me realize that the purpose of the PT was to sort of get my heart used to going upright. And so it started
Mm,
really small with just like laying on the ground and then just like moving my legs basically. And just
mhm.
like slowly getting myself more into upright positions as I exercised, and I started to learn that was just training my body and my heart to not like freak out when I was upright. And so that was really
Yeah.
cool and really helpful. And they basically taught me how to exercise. Because I felt so dumb. It would be like probably like basic exercises, and I'd be like, but how do you do that? Like, what's the proper form? I was probably the most annoying student. But so they were really helpful with that. Yoga, I worked with Andrea, and
Yeah.
she's just this like calming force, and she taught me how to um just relax and put my body in these like regulating positions, and it was something I
Mm,
never knew how to do, and so that was
mm,
really helpful. And then for psych, I was with Kimberly, who is
yeah.
amazing, just amazing. um she really taught me how to rethink some of my fears. Like, for example, I think the thing that kept coming to me throughout this whole long COVID experience is like, this is going to be my life forever. Like, I was just like
Yeah.
in this like, and I learned a lot of long COVID gives you this neuroinflammation, and you have this like derealization, and you don't have all the positive neurotransmitters, and you're not able to be yourself, like
Yeah.
chemically. And so
Yeah.
she really helped me kind of understand that, and that a lot of those
Yeah.
fears were that and not real. And she helped me understand some of my biggest fears, like how am I gonna like have a meeting with a director again, kind of thing. Like I can't
Mm,
do that. And she'd be like, well, that was your life before. And so those things that you're afraid of are actually regulating to you. And so she sort of taught me that all these things I was afraid of were just my life before, and not being able to
mm.
go back to it. And so she really helped me understand how to regulate my nervous system with my own thoughts. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, every single person had like a huge uh you know knowledge that they handed down to me that really helped shape my recovery for sure.
Yeah. And as you said, like, I think you said something like, I even feel stronger than I even was before. And some of those words you said about Kimberly, like learning that now, even COVID or not, like that is powerful.
Yeah.
Understanding how you can regulate your nervous system. Um, you made me go like, gosh, I want to work with Kimberly.
She was
I
amazing.
get to work
Yeah.
with her every day, but I'm not as a client, and I know how just lovely she is and
Yeah,
so
she's
good.
wonderful. I feel like every session I would be like, "You're so good at your job." Like I was just like so impressed. Like she was so really, really skilled at her job, which I imagine her job must be so difficult because she's constantly having to deal with people who are like freaking out. And she was just so she was really amazing.
Yeah, she is, and this is like one of her big passions is like POTS and the autonomic nervous system too. So it just like comes through for sure. And it, you shared a few things that you really learned about your brain and body, like particularly a lot of autonomic pieces, right? Like what state you might be in and what you need in that moment. Are there any things now that you're kind of on this other end of things that you're still kind of practicing and doing that you've learned about your brain and body?
Yeah, definitely. I'm still exercising and stretching and doing things from PT and from yoga. Also things I had done alongside reactive to sort of complement it. I started doing transcendental meditation, which is like amazing. Like I'm such like a
Yeah.
skeptic about everything. And so when I learned about it, I was like meditation, whatever. But then I learned like the premise of TM specifically. And so I've been doing that, 20 minutes twice a day and it's really, been a game changer for me for handling my stress levels. Like it just is chemical. Like it really helps you. So I've been doing that still, which I think has contributed to my health. I also started to have to work like early on. I think like in the middle of reactive, I started working with a dietitian. Like
Okay.
a lot, she's like she calls herself the long COVID dietitian. And if anybody watching this is dealing with long COVID, she, alongside everyone at Reactive, like saved my life. She helped me realize that when you have POTS or long COVID POTS, you're just constantly burning calories when you're even
Mm.
at rest because your heart rate is so
Mm.
elevated. So she helped me understand that first and foremost, I was incredibly malnourished. And so
Oh,
she upped my calories a bunch. She made sure I was eating, 20 grams of protein 5 times a day, 30 grams of fiber,
wow.
like all of these things that really um, helped me, especially alongside the PT. And so she sort of
Mm.
stressed the importance of eating right alongside PT so it doesn't activate the PEM. Um,
Yeah.
and so that was really helpful because she was like, your muscles are your primary blood pump. And so by getting
Mhm.
stronger with PT, that's going to help your blood flow, but you need the calories to sustain that. So making sure I was eating correctly has been huge.
Huge.
And then what else? Oh, I also did like this is like a little like hoo-ha. Like some people are very against it, but I did a little bit of the brain retraining, the like
Okay.
one of those programs with which was like the neuroplasticity of your brain and doing some like somatic meditations and stuff like that. Because when you're in pain all the time or you're feeling like I would get a lot of blood swelling in the legs and stuff. Um,
Oh, okay.
it's like these meditation practices where you just sort of like pay attention to the thing that's making you uncomfortable and then it sort of dissolves. It's like this really weird thing. Like who knew? Because when you
Yeah.
try to avoid stuff, your body makes it worse. And so anyway,
Right.
yeah, so the brain retraining really did help me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you are like such an expert and so insightful, Lisa. I'm just like soaking this all in. But this is just going to be such a helpful discussion for people who are trying to figure this out because you did a lot of this research and you tried these things and they're all so complementary. I'm curious because, I think a lot of folks with these really debilitating symptoms like you've had feel pretty discouraged. Like maybe they're going to be like this forever, like you said, and that it can't get better. And I'm wondering, like, what message might you send somebody who is kind of stuck in that place?
Oh God, if you're in that place, first of all, I'm sorry. It's a horrible, horrible place to be in. You feel like you're just trapped in your own body. You feel imprisoned in your hopelessness. It feels cruel. I remember being in that place and I just felt like I was like, I'm disabled. Like I can't move. And I just remember like looking at other people out in the world and just feeling so separate from them. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
in that situation, just it's hard and it sucks and it's okay to feel that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I would say to those people is you got to start to do the work. It's a job. It's think of it like you're writing a book and you're on page one. And what do you have to do to get to the end? And I think one of the things that help me is understanding that when you have a dip, like when you're starting to do okay, and then you have a dip and you feel shitty again, that you're not starting over. Like I sort of had this analogy
Mm-hmm.
in my head of like if you're, writing a book and you're on page 47 and then you feel shitty for a couple days, you don't start back on page one. You're still on page 47 and you still move forward. And I think wrapping my head around that was really helpful to me. Um, and yeah, I would just say do the work. It's really hard, but you just have to commit to it. You have to feel like you're fighting for your life. I would say avoid the negativity because there's a
Mm-hmm.
couple I'm not a big social media person, but my wife is, and she was all about Reddit and trying to get advice from people on Reddit. And I guess there's one long COVID Reddit group that's incredibly negative. And so I would say don't get too wrapped up in the negative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there, I guess there's another, I think there's like the long COVID group and the long COVID recovery group. And the long COVID
Mm-hmm.
recovery group are people who are a little bit more positive and here's things to try, as opposed to like saying
Mm-hmm.
meditation is stupid, don't do that, eating is just going to make
Mm-hmm.
you fat, like stuff like, so just try to read and watch as many recovery stories as you can and just imbue yourself with the positivity that you will get better, I think.
And now you're sharing one of those, and all of your writing analogies are so beautiful. I mean, clearly you're a writer, but they fit really well. I loved your analogy of like when you have a flare, it's not like you're back at page one. You already
Right,
did page 1 to 47.
right. Oh,
So
there was one
beautiful.
other thing. Oh, here's a
Yeah.
really a huge thing. I forgot. This is like the most important thing. For me, whenever it was a real roller coaster because of my cycle. So as soon as I would start to feel
Oh,
better, and then as soon as I was at that stage in my cycle, like ovulating, I would have a huge dip. And then
oh,
I'd start to get better again. And then I'd get my period and have a huge dip. And so it was like every 2 weeks, it was like my body could not get its bearings. It could not stay because of this huge, dip every time. And so I talked to a woman, a friend of a friend who dealt with POTS when she was like in her 20s or something. And she said the thing that helped her the most in the world was getting on birth control pills. And so
mm,
I talked to my doctor about it, and he was like, "All right, let's try it." Talk to a gynecologist who was like specialized in that. She said she's noticed a lot of long COVID people are struggling with their cycle. I got on a
okay.
specific birth control pill, and that was, I mean, I'm not like pushing meds on people, but that really helped me.
Wow. Yeah, that is a great message because we do see that. So yeah, super important because when you hit those phases and ups and downs, it can be so discouraging.
Yeah,
So to know there's something that can help it,
yeah.
is awesome. And what might you say to someone who's maybe catching this video and they're kind of on the fence of doing a program like ours, it's kind of an integrated team approach to these symptoms, what would you say to that person?
I'd say do it. I'd say absolutely 1,000% do it. I think the integrative approach that you've sort of pioneered at Reactive is huge. I mean, they all talk to each other, they know you, they know your problems, they can help you. It was so funny at like my first or second session. I like Malia said something to me that I know I had told Emily or vice versa. And I was like, you guys talk to each other. And it was just so, I felt very like, okay, you know, they're trying to help me and they are putting their heads together to try to help me. And so I think that the integrative approach is absolutely brilliant. I don't understand how that's not a staple everywhere. um, but I would say if you're on the fence, then get off the fence and do it.
Yeah, we would love integrated care everywhere. That's my favorite thing. Like Lisa, even if I'm not one of the people in a program, I often get to be in the little groups
Mhm.
chatting about cases where people get stuck and I get to go, ooh, okay, well, what about this? And but yeah, it's what we love too because we want to figure it out together. We don't always have the all of the answers in our own brain, but as a team, we can definitely it helps us. It helps us to kind of hear from everybody.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the last things I want to ask is we also have a lot of clinicians that will watch these videos. And I always share, like, I learn more, in talking to you than I read like 100 articles on POTS this, in the last 2 weeks, but learn more in this conversation from you. And I wonder if you have something that you would share for other clinicians about about how they might approach people or just therapy for POTS and long COVID.
Yeah, I guess I would say first to just listen,
Mhm.
um, to believe your patient, um, and to be patient with your patient, because I think that it's very overwhelming. Like when you're feeling so like even just like getting to the appointments is incredibly difficult. Like I couldn't walk. So it was like I thought I would need wheelchairs for the rest of my life. Like it was just like I had to see before I got in with the right doctor, I had to go to like a hematologist, I had to go to a neurologist, I had to go to a cardiologist, like all of these specialists. And you just really feel like a cog in a machine. And
Mhm.
so I feel just treat them like humans. For long COVID specifically, I would say to understand the connection between long COVID and histamine. That was huge. I learned
Mhm.
that through my dietitian. Like long COVID just screws up your how your body handles histamine. Um, so to look into that because I had a couple people before I found the right person who said there's no science behind that, it's not real, and just wanted
Mhm.
to put me on like a gluten-free diet and that would fix everything. And that just was not the right way to do it. So look into
Yeah.
the histamine correlation with long COVID. And what's the last one? There has to be three. Um, rules of three. I guess oh, and to understand that like this is a new thing. And so I had a doctor tell me like I'm never gonna get better. Like this is it. And so that was just incredibly demoralizing. I think activated a huge dip where I just was like, oh my God. And so just be very careful before you tell your patients that they're never gonna get better, because this is a very new thing. And even if there is no specific science, that this is new. And so there might not be, but that doesn't mean that it's fact. And so, yeah, be very careful about that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really important one, I think. Such good lessons for all of us. And then, I mean, what's next for you? I mean, you're going to be having a baby. You're working. Like,
Mhm.
what's happening in your life?
Life feels normal again. I was telling my friend the other day, like, I'm back to normal problems. Like, should I get bangs again? Like, I'm like, I get to worry about those things again. So life is good. Yeah, my wife, she's pregnant and it was a whole thing where we had had like a miscarriage right before I got the long COVID stuff happened. And then we were supposed to do it again while I was super sick. And so that was like a huge decision of when do we try again? I'm super sick. Am I going to be well enough to be a
Yeah.
mom? Like that was a huge thing that Kimberly was like incredibly helpful about. I was like, I'm disabled. How can I be a mother? I can't be a mother anymore. So now she's pregnant and we're expecting in the summer, and work is going really well, and life goes on. Like that's so life's good. Well, aside from the
Yeah.
fact that our city is on fire. Um,
Aside from that, aside that we
yeah,
actually like rescheduled this interview because you were like evacuating
yeah, exactly.
a
And I
couple
had
weeks
jury
ago.
duty. It was like that.
Oh,
It was like I
right.
had jury duty, and then I got home, and then I was like, oh, there's a fire like 5 miles away. It was horrible.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. The longest January in the history. And but you're right, but you're living through it. Life goes on. I'm so happy for you and your wife. I can't wait to share everything with the team too. They'll be really excited to see this video
That's so
and
nice.
hear from you. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for taking this time out of your day to share your story and your message for other people. It really means a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I think I did it mostly because I feel like I owe my life to reactive, but also because I watched these videos when I was down in the dumps and they really helped me. So if one person can watch this and get some nugget of information that can help them, then it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It absolutely is. Thank you so much. And also, like, it was just so nice to meet you. So fun. I'm sorry your raccoon didn't join us
I
here
know, I'm so
live, but I
sorry.
thought maybe for sure that would be really
Yeah,
fun.
I thought
So
maybe we'd at least get a squirrel or something. But
yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for talking to me. It was so nice to meet you.
Yeah, same here. Okay. Well, have a good rest of your day, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.